We like to think of ourselves as completely different from everyone else, but at our core, we're all human. We may look different, act different, and live different lives, but at the end of the day, our brains are wired the same way, and the better you understand human behavior, the more power you gain, not just in dealing with others, but in mastering yourself as well. And so to see how this works, we will be exploring The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. And according to the author, there are two sides to these laws, and you can't ignore one or the other. You have to see both of them. The first side is yourself. This means you have to be willing to look inward, to face parts of yourself that you struggle with and that may be causing you problems. We all have a dark side. We all carry bad traits. The only difference is that for some people it's more obvious, and for others it's more hidden or repressed. And this isn't about beating yourself up. It's about giving you power. Because once you recognize these traits in yourself, you can work on changing them. You'll be able to control them instead of letting them control you. And the second side is outward. Looking at these traits in other people can also be useful. It helps you understand their behavior, protect yourself when needed, and navigate relationships more effectively. And so with that in mind, let's start with the law number 1, the law of irrationality, master the emotional self. Humans aren't as rational as we like to think. Our emotions like anger, fear, jealousy, pride, and excitement often influence our decisions far more than reason ever does. Even when we think we're being logical, these feelings are quietly guiding our actions, because that's human nature. These emotions aren't flaws, they're part of being human, but they can become a problem when you let them control you and when you let them push you to react impulsively. They become a problem when you know they're not benefiting you and they're not giving you any good results, but you keep letting them control your decisions and reactions. One classic example I'm sure we've all experienced is when we overreact in a conflict with someone, and in the heat of the moment, we might say something hurtful to that person that we end up regretting later. Or maybe you know you did someone wrong, but pride stops you from admitting it because it feels easier to think the other person is at fault rather than face your own mistake. Feeling pride or frustration is not something you should be ashamed of, but what really matters is reflecting on these emotions and understanding where they come from. Why do we feel anger when someone makes a comment about us? Because if we're being honest, the things that trigger us the most are the exact areas we need to work on. To master your emotions, you need to first understand what's really driving them, and you need to take a moment before responding and to consider whether your reaction will actually serve you or just make the situation even worse. And once you start noticing that other people are also driven by their emotions, it completely changes the way you see their actions. So for example, when someone criticizes you, you'll realize it usually says more about them than about you. Seeing things through their lens and understanding what might be driving their behavior can help you stay calm and not take things personally. And this can save you so much energy and time that could be spent on way more important things. Law number 2 is the law of narcissism, transforms self-love into empathy. We all are a bit narcissistic. The only difference is some have it in small doses and some have it in extreme destructive ways. From the moment we are born, we have a need for attention. We're wired to see the world through the lens of our own needs and emotions. That's why even as adults, we often think more about how situations affect us than about what others might be going through. A little narcissism is actually healthy. It just means you value yourself and you treat yourself with respect. The problem arises when it becomes extreme. When self-focus turns into manipulation or a constant need for validation, it starts to harm not only the people around us, but also ourselves. When we become so self-obsessed, we damage our relationships and we limit our own growth. That's why we need to balance our self-focus. The goal isn't to eliminate our narcissistic side entirely, but to keep it balanced, which means strong enough to protect and value yourself, but controlled enough to see and respect the needs of others. On the outward side, understanding this can be so freeing. When people hurt us or betray our trust, it can really affect us deeply. But in reality, most of the time, their actions are driven by their own self-focus. While that doesn't justify their bad behavior, being aware of this gives you power because you're in control of how you respond instead of letting their behavior control you. You start seeing situations more clearly and you can act from choice and not emotion. And if it's best for you, you can even remove yourself to protect your peace. The next law is law number 5, the law of covetousness. Become an elusive object of desire. We all want what we can't easily have, and that's what the law of covetousness is all about. Desire grows when something feels slightly unattainable. The more we chase it, the more it slips away, and the more we pull back, the the more it draws people in. And this is not about playing games. It simply is about understanding that it's our human nature to value what is not instantly available. Our ancestors operated the same way. When it came to hunting and gathering, the food that was scarce was valued more than what was abundant, and this instinct hasn't disappeared. We rarely feel satisfied and grateful with what we already have. We constantly want more, and we always crave what's missing. And this constant craving isn't always a bad thing. It's wired into us and has helped humans survive and progress for thousands of years. Without this desire for more, our world wouldn't be as developed as it is today. That's what pushes us to dream bigger, to challenge ourselves, and to create the life we truly want. But the downside is that it can also make us burnt out, dissatisfied, and blind to what we already have. So we might start comparing ourselves to others, always trying to have more than we need, or chasing relationships and experiences that aren't truly meant for us. In our society, it's easy to be caught up in the grass is always greener mentality. We see what others have and we want it for ourselves, even if we don't need it. And this constant comparison can lead to envy. We start focusing on what others have instead of appreciating and feeling grateful for our own lives. And envy can make us feel dissatisfied, distracted, and even bitter, which can pull our attention away from our own goals and growth. And so understanding this instinct allows us to notice when our desire is serving us and when it's controlling us, so we can choose when to pursue something and when to simply enjoy what we already have. I'm not suggesting we ignore our ambitions, but it's important to recognize the difference between what we truly need and what we simply crave. Just because someone else has something doesn't mean it's meant for you. We each have our own path, our own goals, and what's right for one isn't always right for the other. And understanding this law can also be beneficial in our interactions with others. By creating a sense of mystery and not revealing everything at once, we naturally make ourselves more intriguing and desirable. It keeps people curious and interested, which makes your presence more memorable and impactful. The next law is law number 7, the Law of Defensiveness. Soften people's resistance by confirming their self-opinion. We all have a natural tendency to become defensive when someone criticizes us or challenges our ideas, even if it's constructive and to our benefit. And that's usually because our ego feels threatened, so our first reaction is often to protect ourselves instead of listening. People often resist ideas or feedback when it challenges their self-image, even if it could help them. That's why one of the most effective ways to influence or communicate with others is to first acknowledge and validate their perspective. And you don't have to agree with everything, but showing that you see their point of view softens their resistance and opens the door for them to actually hear what you're saying. Because when people feel understood, they're more likely to consider your ideas and even reflect on their own behavior. This is how you master the art of influence. But if you find defensiveness within yourself, sometimes it's completely normal to feel it, especially if you don't fully trust the person giving you feedback or if you don't feel close enough to them. I know for myself that I'm much more receptive to advice from people I have a strong connection with because their words feel reliable and safe. Defensiveness only becomes harmful when it stops us from seeing what's real or learning from what's happening. Avoiding criticism will only keep you stuck repeating the same mistakes and missing so many opportunities to grow. So that's why it's important to listen with an open mind even when it feels uncomfortable. And even if the feedback might not be shared in the best way, there's often something valuable to learn as long as we can set our ego aside and focus on the message. Instead of avoiding it or pushing it away, we can let it guide us toward what we need to improve. That's actually an opportunity to learn, not to resist. The next law is the law number 11, the Law of Grandiosity. Know your limits. Grandiosity is the belief that you're capable of more than most people, that your ideas, skills, or vision have a bigger impact than others might realize. It's a natural part of human ambition. Without it, we'd never try to reach higher or take risks. But not all grandiosity is equal. There's fantastical grandiosity, which is driven by ego and often disconnected from reality. People with this type tend to ignore advice, overestimate their abilities, and sometimes make reckless decisions. Then there's practical grandiosity, which is grounded and constructive. It's about having big ambitions, believing in your potential, and yet staying realistic, listening to feedback, learning from mistakes, and taking careful steps toward your goals. And this is the kind of grandiosity that actually leads to meaningful success and growth. Take Elon Musk, for example. When he first talked about colonizing Mars and building reusable rockets, so many many people thought these goals were completely unrealistic. But that's the thing about grandiosity when it's practical. It's not just daydreaming, it's dreaming big while actually doing the work to make it happen. It's believing in possibilities that others can't see yet and having the guts to go for them. That's the kind of grandiosity that can move the world forward. And this goes for you as well. You can leverage grandiosity by having daring goals combined with disciplined effort to achieve things most people wouldn't even try. Because as a tool, grandiosity can be incredibly powerful if you back it up with consistent action. At its core, this law is all about knowing your limits and not living in a fantasy where you refuse to improve. It's about believing in your potential and having confidence in your abilities, while also continuously improving the areas where you're not yet strong. It's about channeling your confidence in a productive way so it works for you and not against you. The last law we're exploring is the law number 13, the Law of Aimlessness, advance with a sense of purpose. Without a clear sense of purpose, it's easy to drift from one thing to another and to waste energy and time on what doesn't truly matter. Aimlessness leaves you frustrated, stuck, and constantly chasing distractions instead of meaningful progress. However, when you have a goal or purpose, when you know where you want to go, you can prioritize what truly matters and stay motivated even when challenges arise. And you don't need a perfect plan for every step, but just knowing the direction you want to go is enough to start making progress. As humans, we are wired to have a purpose, so going through life aimlessly without any goals or direction can feel empty. If you don't decide where you're going, someone else will decide it for you. If you don't ask yourself the hard questions today, you'll look back later and realize you wasted all your time chasing things that weren't meant for you. So take a moment and ask yourself, who do I want to become? What do I want in life? And what steps can I take now to start moving toward that version of myself? Reflecting on these is the first step to take control of your life and make your potential a reality. Mastering this law is realizing that life won't magically give you direction. You have to create it. Human nature is complex, but the more we understand it, the more power we have over our own lives. The more we recognize the traits we struggle with, the more we can leverage them to our advantage so we can achieve better outcomes. Awareness gives us the choice to grow instead of repeating mistakes and to take control of our actions instead of letting them control us. And so with that said, I hope that this episode was able to help you see yourself and others more clearly and give you tools to navigate life more effectively. Thank you so much for watching. I love you and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.